Forced to work from home by your employer? Laid off or feeling depressed at home? Do you want to make money working from anywhere? We'll show you how to do it from your couch. It's time for another episode of the Work From Home Show. Coming to you from their homes in Austin, Texas and Tampa, Florida, here are your hosts, Adam and Naresh.
Welcome back to another episode of the Work From Home Show. I'm your host, Naresh Vissa, with Adam Trader, and today we have two guests with us, David Dye and Karin Hurt. Karin is the CEO of Let's Grow Leaders and the #1 bestselling co-author with her husband, David Dye, of the book Winning Well, A Manager's Guide to Getting Results Without Losing Your Soul, and the new book, Courageous Cultures, How to Build Teams of Micro-Innovators, Problem Solvers, and Customer Advocates. This is the first time we're having two guests on the show, not one on the hot seat. So this is really a treat. Karin was named on Inc.'s list of 100 great leadership speakers, and David is a former city councilman and nonprofit executive. He is the president of Let's Grow Leaders and founder and president of Trailblaze, Inc., a Denver-based leadership coaching, consulting, and training practice. So, David and Karin, welcome to the Work From Home Show.
Thank you so much for having us.
It's really, really a pleasure to have both of you. Like I said, first time we're having two guests on the show, so this should be extra special. Let's first start with the behaviors in business that produce the best results. And I ask about this because right now, business has changed a lot just in the past 4 or 5 months due to the lockdowns, globally, the lockdowns, pandemic. Technology still seems to be the right place to be. And so the way business has been conducted has really, really changed. So what are your qualities or behaviors that produce the best results in business?
What we're finding during this particular time of real stress and change, where everyone's having to do the best they can with what they have from where they are, the first thing is really creating that genuine human connection with the people that you're working with. And that, it seems to be, that's always been important, but it's more important now than ever because you just don't know all of the pressures that people are dealing with. And so to have that level of trust really starts with a human connection. And then all of the things that you need to do well to be a good leader, you need to do even better now. So, having clarity about what is most important in the work that you're doing, because there's so much distraction. And then, the curiosity to be able to tap into the best thinking of the people that you're working with.
If there's anything positive that comes out of all of this disruption, the emphasis on that connected leadership is a really positive thing, because as people are working remotely around the world, you're really looking at their results. That old command and control style of management and leadership that was on its way out anyhow, I think this is hopefully hastening the decline in that approach.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to the results-based work. But you were talking about carrying your mission forward, and whenever you have an office environment, it can be a little easier for people to stay on mission in some ways and to really believe in what they're doing, because maybe you have meetings with the executives, or maybe you just see them working and they talk about their mission. How do you carry that forward whenever you don't have that person-to-person time, and how you're bringing new people in who haven't experienced kind of the culture that you've had? How do you build your team in such a way that everybody buys into the mission even if they're not seeing each other face to face?
The principles are the same. And so the things that you're talking about, those kind of intangible moment by moment where you kind of soak it up through osmosis and proximity, you have to recreate that, but you do it differently. You have to do it intentionally. And so, we've seen many different ways of going about it, from folks that do like internal podcasts or quick video segments, or, are using the platforms that are around video conferencing and so forth to stay connected and have those conversations. And so there's lots of different ways to go about that. You have to rethink it. but being as committed to it as you were before.
And deliberate. So one of the things we work with all of our clients on is communicating 5 by 5. So 5 times 5 different ways if anything is important. And so when you think about that in a remote environment, what could that look like? So you've got a strategic initiative. You need to know everybody's on board. So, maybe you start with the beginning of the week, an all hands Zoom huddle where you reinforce your message, you tell a strategic story, you connect what to why, then you're reinforcing in your one-on-one meetings. Maybe then you do, a lot of our clients are doing some really neat things with like the CEO doing a quick video message or writing a very connected letter. We were talking with someone yesterday, is that they said their employees are giving them feedback on this Friday night. She sends a note out every week, and people say, I don't leave the office till I read it. So they're like looking forward to communication, which is really exciting.
Another example that comes to mind just happened last week. We were working with a client and had a video conference call with a number of different people on that. One of them was wrapping up a juice cleanse that his wife had helped him be a part of, and he was bemoaning the fact that all he had had for 3 days was juice and how hungry he was. And the chief operating officer jokingly said, well, I'll order you a pizza. And about half an hour after we get off the call, he emails everybody on the call with a picture of the pizza that she actually had ordered and sent to him. Right?
There you go.
That's company culture. And this particular group, they have a culture of treating each other as family and taking care of one another. And of course, not everybody's ever going to get a pizza after every phone call, but it was just one of those moments of, hey, we are here for one another.
And we were working with an association yesterday, and it was interesting. It was supposed to be a program that was face-to-face, and we were all sad because we thought this one was it was a small one. It was an executive program. It was only going to be 12 people. We thought we were going to be able to pull it off face-to-face, and the governor of the state at the last minute said no more than 10, and we were just over the limit. So the woman who hired us, sent a Grubhub thing to everybody and said, while you're in this program with Karin and David during the lunch break, here lunch is on us. And I just think those little things like that really do make people feel valued and seen.
Yeah, and talking, kind of piggybacking off a lot of what you said. First off, I can't believe that the economy, I don't know if it's a global economy or just a U.S. economy, but I can't believe the economy went so long without being completely results-based. And with this whole work from home digitization, I was reading, we did an episode on this, and I was reading a story about how companies are realizing many of their middle managers weren't really doing much, and they had no idea about that really until the past 2 or 3 months. And they're realizing that the analysts, the associates, kind of the lower level people, the younger people, and then, of course, the directors and VPs are the ones who are doing a lot of the work. But there's a huge chunk of corporate America that has just collected a paycheck and hasn't done anything. And that's just kind of surprising to me. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think it really is probably industry dependent on those sorts of things. And
company dependent.
Yeah, we have not. What I would say is that organizations that have a lot of folks who are collecting a paycheck without adding value don't stay around all that long, or they quickly get outcompeted by those who figure out how to get everybody, making sure everybody is contributing value. And, I think one of the things to keep in mind that we are really cognizant of is that when you're talking about culture in this context, is that every organization is a little bit different. And while you have some who, yes, have moved to a massively work from home type of situation, you have others who are every bit as face-to-face as they ever were, at higher risk of disease transmission and all the challenges that go with that, and they're public facing, and whether you're in healthcare or retail or different things. And so while we're talking about these aspects of things, it's important to keep in mind that every leader and every person is having a different experience.
And what I would say is, those middle managers, if you can nail that, if you can get your middle managers really setting clear expectations, building strategy, reinforcing, developing their people,
cultivating innovation in their team.
That is such a vital layer, for folks who do that well. Yeah. And so, I know that for our clients that the middle management role, and that's where we spend a lot of time, is really making sure that those folks are have the tools and experience and training they need to be successful.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the toughest roles, I think, in corporate America, to do well. And we have a passion and compassion for helping folks who are doing that to be able to thrive at it and really add good value both to their people and to the business.
But to your point, if that position just becomes a pass-through, then that is an incredible waste.
So as we're becoming more results-oriented and people aren't in the office, it can be easy for a middle manager or even the boss just to say, just in terms like the Steve Jobs, I want something that can play me music in my pocket and make it happen by this date. And they're not seeing the people who potentially could be in the office for, in the past they would have seen them there for 15 hours or seen them there for 12 hours or however long. But now you just have them sitting at home and they're working however long they need to work. If you don't have the right environment, you don't know if you're burning them out. How can you make sure that you're set up in such a way that you're giving your managers and your people enough of a culture that they are comfortable speaking up, if that makes any sense, since you can't see the time that they're putting in at the office?
Yeah, absolutely. So there are a couple different aspects of your question I think are important to unpack here. The first is, let's talk about that culture of speaking up and what keeps people from that. So, our favorite definition of culture is Seth Godin. He says, people like us do things like this. That's what culture is. And so in what we call a courageous culture, that's a culture where everybody is speaking up on behalf of the customer, on behalf of a better employee experience, finding those efficiencies and places where we can do better work and just add more value overall. Well, the natural kind of human approach to a lot of that work is to maintain safe silence. I'm not going to speak up because, it takes effort or it's work, or if you're working from home, I've got to say something to somebody who's not right around and they're not seeing it. So what do I do? So in answer to the second half of your question about what do leaders do to cultivate that, part of it is, I'm thinking of just some work we were doing with a technology company just this week who's having this very conversation with, and one of their senior executives said to everybody else on the call, listen, at least in my team, people are being more productive in an 8-hour day than they were when they were in the office. There's fewer distractions. They're not having the commute to deal with. There's fewer meetings because we're being more judicious about how we're calling meetings. And so people are being more productive. We have to be careful and resist the urge and make our expectations very clear to avoid people now extending that 8.5 or 9 hours to become 10 or 11 or 12, which is easy to do as the boundaries between work and home start to blur. And so as a leader, to make your expectations very clear, we talk about something we call an expectations matrix. What I expect, what I don't expect, what I receive, what I don't receive. And to be very clear that I am not having people working 24/7, and I don't expect that. And we need to maintain what that looks like and help cultivate those healthy boundaries for our team and model them ourselves, to the extent where, like one executive was saying, one of the things I'm doing is I let all the team know this is when I clock off, and I leave my phone at my desk. And I go spend the next 4 or 5 hours with my family that in the evening. And then I pick it back up and I will do an hour of, dealing with fires before I go to bed if I need to. And he's got an international team, so that's relevant for that person. So those are just a couple of examples.
And what was really interesting as we were having, and this was a really senior level executive team to have this conversation, where you would think the expectation is that they get paid the big bucks. They would be working long hours. And as they were sharing these stories, the most senior person, who was the boss of everybody else on the video conference, kept, anytime somebody said, I'm setting boundaries, or this is what I'm doing, or I'm putting down the phone, he was taking on Zoom and he was putting like a big yellow thumbs up sign,
or applause,
like he was reinforcing, like, yes, amen, I support you in this, which I thought was really good.
Yeah, because it's so easy in this environment for those who are working from home and don't have a natural stopping point to those boundaries blur, and it can consume you.
And the other thing that I think is really important is to have a conversation with each person on your team to say, what is it going to be, what do you need to be most productive in this environment? So if you are someone with 4 children at home and trying to, homeschool and support all of that, your most productive hours might not be from...
Well, I can tell you when those are. Right? I am a homeschooling father of 4.
To be able to say to someone, when can you be most productive? And, maybe, your expectation, they're going to be more productive first thing in the morning. They'll be more productive later in the evening after the kids are in bed, and working with them on that schedule, and not saying, hey, are you online? Where are you? It's 3:00 in the afternoon. Where are you? Right? Like that kind of, in this particular environment, is not particularly good. I mean, obviously there are some.
It depends on the nature of the work.
Yeah, if you've got a call center or something that you have to be online.
To the extent you can be flexible and have those conversations, asking your people, what is life like for you right now, and how can we help you to be as productive as possible and healthy as possible? And and just start the conversations there, and you'll be able to make some progress.
Well, I've got to say, lots and lots of our listeners are small business owners. And when I say small business, I don't mean 50 plus employees, 20 plus employees. I mean, maybe, 3 or 4.
Yep.
And my business, for example, I'm the head of my business, like the face of my business. And I employ a bunch of part-time workers and independent contractors domestically within the United States and internationally overseas. And so what advice do you have for companies like mine, which don't really have a company culture? And I'm happy that I don't have a company culture. I like the way things operate. It's very smooth. It's very efficient, and people, they do their work. And my belief is that the more time they can spend away from work, as long as they're getting their work done, the happier they're going to be and the more productive they're going to be. Your thoughts?
Yeah, so it's interesting because we too run a small business, and we have a number of contractors and part-time workers, and so I think we can relate pretty well there.
Very much relate.
One of the things that I think is really important, which we've learned, is though the showing up curious and asking for people's best ideas still matters in that context too. And so you've got to be super clear on your direction and making sure you're connecting what you're doing to why you're doing it, so they get the bigger picture. Because if you don't spend that time doing that, if perhaps they're working for multiple people, right? It's easy for them to get distracted. So we still spend a lot of time connecting what to why and clarity of expectation and what success looks like. We've also found, like, for example, as we're launching this new book, we're doing a lot of, what creative ideas do you have? What are, and they're like, oh, well, there's this new technology, or there's that going on. And they're aware of some things and are bringing some really great ideas. And I think if we were just like, hey, just do your job, we would be missing some of the creative opportunities that we have.
There's 2 thoughts that occur to me on this question. The first is that every company, every business, every human interaction has culture. We may not be intentional about it. We may not call it that. But in our interactions with our team and all the people who work with us, there's definitely a culture. They understand and have an expectation of what working with us is like, and appreciate that. And so one of the things that we strive for, and we would highly recommend this to your listeners, is a culture of partnership. And so if you're hiring a contractor, are they a commoditized type of person who's doing a quick amount of something for a few dollars and trading time for money and they're out? Or are they a true partner with your business? And as Karin's describing that, connecting what you're doing to why you're doing it and what the bigger picture is like, there are contractors out there who enjoy that same kind of partnership. And in the work that we do with organizations, large and small, we want to be true partners with them as well. So that is part of our culture, and it's something that we believe is very healthy and makes organizations more successful. Not everybody chooses to go that route, but the people that we love working with and that we love to have work with us are bent that direction.
And stick around. Yeah. And so after,
add more value per transaction.
Yeah. And so also then they know what people like us do. So because these folks have been working with us for so long, I feel confident that they could speak to a customer and they will know our brand, right? They'll know that you have to be incredibly responsive. You have to be incredibly trustworthy, do what you say, all those things, because they are representing our brand. And even though they're not full time.
Mm-hmm. And I would say, to Naresh's question, having been a contractor with some of his projects, the environment, the culture of his company is essentially he hires you for what he knows you can do, and then he lets you do your job, and your expectation is on the deadline, it's done, and he doesn't care about the road you got to that point. Mm-hmm. Yep. In your article on your site, the How to Lead Decisively When You Don't Know What's Next, you talked about preparing for the pivot, and this is something that's come to my mind a lot lately, and it's that as everything is uncertain, my wife works in healthcare, and so every time that they talk about changing the lockdown or changing this or that, it always becomes a what's going to happen to your job next, because what are they going to shut down? What are your hours going to be? All of this, and it can be very overwhelming, especially for business owners, to know kind of what's coming next. How do I deal with it? How do you as a business owner keep your sanity knowing you have to prepare for the coming pivots?
Yeah, starting with there is a mindset in dealing with times like this. And when you're talking about this kind of change, the fact is we don't know what's coming next. And that is stressful and hard, particularly for people who love to plan and really manage their destiny in a particular way. And the mindset of staying loose and adaptable, and if you picture somebody on a paddleboard or a surfboard who's kind of floating on the ocean, those waves are going to come, and they've got to maintain their balance and stay loose and fluid in that moment. And businesses have to, there's a metaphor there where businesses have to do a bit of the same thing. And whether, you're talking about a position, an employed position within healthcare, and yes, as those waves flow back and forth, what is that going to look like? It's definitely going to change from month to month right now. But if you're talking about as a business owner, that core question of who are my customers, how do I add value to them, and what can that value look like, and what are the different ways that I can be thinking about delivering that value, and be thinking about that and have different options in mind depending on what comes. Those are some ways
so staying true to the clarity of your mission, what is most important, and knowing what you do know and what you don't know, because it's easy to feel like, well, everything is uncertain. And what do you know? You still know your values, you still know your mission, and I think getting grounded in that. I mean, we went through a massive pivot. I mean, absolutely a massive pivot. So in 1 week, we watched every single thing on our calendar disappear, because live programs, right? Everything. And it was like, oh my gosh.
With one exception. The one thing that didn't disappear is that we were doing some live remote training with international leaders around in one company, with international leaders around the world. Well, that live remote program was the one thing that didn't disappear, but it was a way we were delivering the value that we deliver.
So our pivot was, we took our basement and we created an entire studio. We invested in technology, and we came out of the gate really fast with able to expand our live online programs. And we called our clients and said, you know what, this is how we could do it. Let us do a demo for you. This is how we can do this program. Now we can take, instead of doing your full day program, why don't we do it spaced learning over time, over 6 weeks, an hour a week? This is what we'll do in between sessions. And it's been interesting because our business has actually grown during this time, as opposed to shrinking. And I think it's because of the ability to say, how can we do this? How can we deliver the value that we have in a different way? And what are the possibilities?
Yeah, for most businesses, your customers and your clients still have a need that you can fulfill, but it's going to take some different ways of thinking about it.
Like my hairdresser mixed up hair dye and hand delivered it to our house, right? And I mean, I paid her a lot of money for that hair dye, right? And so, I mean, that's creative thinking. Like, what is the value that you can add?
Can you talk about your 7 questions to ask in a mid-year review, the pandemic edition that you have?
Yeah, so, we are such big believers that a mid-year review is so important, and it's one of the least used leadership tools. And people are, and usually in companies, it's because it's not mandatory, and so a lot of managers blow it off. But I think it's like the halftime huddle of a game. It's an opportunity to say, the year's not out, we still have an opportunity here.
And then when you're in the middle of a pandemic, all right, that adds a layer of complexity where you might be tempted to blow it off, but that would be a mistake.
So some of the questions there, is we said that during a pandemic, this is some of the things you should do. What's the most challenging part of the last 3 months for you? How can I best help? What don't I understand about where you are right now that I should?
And then, keeping in the vein of courageous cultures, having the curiosity, like as if I'm somebody's manager, I'm curious about what you're learning about how to be most productive right now. Are there changes in the way that we're working together, meeting schedules, anything like that, like we were talking about earlier, that might help you be more effective in your work? And this is also, by the way, an opportunity to capture all the learning that's happening in a disruption like this. There is a massive amount of learning that's taking place in micro innovations. And as a leader, if we can ask those questions, whether it's of our employees, whether it's of our contractors, whoever it might be, there's opportunities to learn that we can capture and incorporate. So another question, what is scaring you most right now? What's on your mind? What are you worried about? What are you excited about? What's the most important thing that you're working on? What could we do that would what can we eliminate to ensure you succeed at that? As we've been working with clients to help them capture their learning, that question about what have we eliminated or what have we gotten rid of that's helped you to be more productive, and does it ever need to come back? It's an important question.
Great. Well, before we kind of wrap things up, Karin and David, can you just share your website and any other final thoughts you have for our listeners or anything else you want to pitch?
Absolutely. So our website is letsgrowleaders.com. And our new book, Courageous Cultures, How to Build Teams of Microinnovators, Problem Solvers, and Customer Advocates, is available for pre-order now. And if you go to our website, there's all kinds of pre-order bonuses that you can receive as well and get a free download a free chapter. And I'd say our final advice is how we always like to end our programs is, to be the leader you want your boss to be. And if you think about that, if more people thought about that, we'd have more better leaders in the world.
And and with that, my final thought would be that in this time of disruption and change, and whether you're talking about the worst economic turmoil in a century, a global pandemic, or a global movement for racial equity, whatever lens you take to look at it, we need leaders. All of us need people who are looking to the future, asking, how can we work together to make this a better place and a better time for all of us? And if we'll all commit to that, both in our businesses and the world, we're going to get there.
Awesome. Karin Hurt and David Dye. They are both the, co-founders, presidents, CEOs of Let's Grow Leaders, and #1 best-selling author of multiple books that they've already discussed. Website again is letsgrowleaders.com, letsgrowleaders.com. And their latest book, Courageous Cultures, How to Build Teams of Microinnovators, Problem Solvers, and Customer Advocates. Check it out at letsgrowleaders.com to get all those freebies. You can also get it straight up on Amazon. David, Dye and Karin Hurt, thanks a lot for joining us on the Work From Home Show. And to all of our listeners, visit us at workfromhomeshow.com, workfromhomeshow.com. If you have any questions at all, hello@workfromhomeshow.com. Hello@workfromhomeshow.com. If you have questions for David or Karin and don't want to reach out to them directly, we'll be sure to relay that. So until next time, keep on working from home.